Okay, we're going to start doing a couple review videos. If some of you want to take a peek at some of the stuff from the old chapters, I know it's probably something you haven't thought about for a while. So we're starting right at the very beginning. Let's talk a little bit about where we started, how this U.S. government, the foundations of government, how we got to where we are today. First things first, the first government, remember, was laid out by the Articles of Confederation, which were extremely weak. It really only provided for a very loose union of the 13 original states. They had a lot of power to do their own thing, and a lot of states did do their own thing. Okay, major problems with the Articles of Confederation. They lacked an executive branch. There was no president. So as we kind of learned about in Unit 10, the president, the big thing they do is they enforce laws. So there was nobody really there to enforce the laws of the United States under the Articles of Confederation, because we had no executive branch and no president. So that was a major problem. We had, again, disputes that were occurring between states was pretty difficult to solve because we had no national judiciary. So anytime like Pennsylvania and New York had a squabble, there was nobody there to kind of referee that. There was no national judicial system. So that was a problem, major problem. We had no ability to tax. That might be the biggest problem. The government was broke. They had no money. So every time they needed money, they had to kind of go out and say, like, hey, states, can you spare a little? We could use a couple bucks. Usually the states would say, go jump in a lake. We prefer not to do that. States printed their own money. They made their own deals with other countries, like their own treaties and trade deals, which obviously didn't really lend for a very unified country. That was bad business. So states printed their own money, made their own deals. Laws were extremely difficult to pass. 9 of the 13 states had to agree, which, again, we've kind of talked about politics all year long, to get a majority is a really difficult task. To get 9 out of 13, that is a pretty tough task. To amend the Articles of Confederation, once they realized they weren't working, how do we fix these things? To amend the Articles of Confederation was almost impossible. It wasn't impossible, but it was really close, because to amend those, you had to get all 13 states had to agree. Again, that is really, really difficult to get all 13 kind of on the same page. Okay, so they realized this was not working out for anybody. It needed to have a new system. And the number one thing that proved to everybody that, hey, this is a broken system, was an incident known as Shay's Rebellion. Remember, there was this guy that tried to overtake an armory in a town because his farm was being foreclosed on, and it took the United States government a shockingly long period of time to actually go ahead and overtake and kind of gain control of this town back from Daniel Shays and his band of rebellious farmers. So if an entire government has a hard time taking a town away from a farmer and a couple of his friends, we got an issue. So the states agreed to meet in Philadelphia in the summer of 1787 at the Constitutional Convention and determine, what do we want our government to be? We need to make some changes. They met to hammer out changes to the Articles of Confederation, but they quickly realized that this was a broken system. They need to kind of go all in, otherwise it's going to fail. So they quickly decided they're going to scrap the old government, and they were going to kind of retool what they had. Here's kind of what everybody agreed on, and kind of the basis, the framework. They loved the idea of federalism, the fact that states had some power, the federal government had some power. Obviously, under the Articles of Confederation, that power dynamic was way off, and the fact that states had way too much power and the federal government had practically none. So they needed to do a better job of balancing things out. They knew they wanted a representative democracy. They wanted the people to have a voice. We talked about the difference at the beginning of the year between direct democracy and representative democracy. Direct democracies really don't exist, even in very small organizations. Direct democracy would be everybody votes on everything all the time. So the government wants to buy pencils, literally that's put out a vote to all the citizens saying, do you think we should buy pencils? I don't really care. Sure. A representative democracy obviously allows representatives to make those decisions for us, and we can weigh in on who those representatives are. So if I look and say Mackenzie's a bad representative, I don't want her speaking for me. I can vote for her if I like, and I can vote against her if I like. I can pick who I want to represent me. Separation of powers was a big deal. Again, because where we came from, remember, in Great Britain, we felt like that people had too much, individuals had too much power. So we wanted to separate everybody's particular job. Everybody needs to stay in their own lane. So if I'm the president, I can do these things, like this list of things. If I'm the Congress, I can do these things. The courts can do these things. And checks and balances. If the president or the Congress or the courts get too powerful, there needs to be some way to balance things out, some sort of check that we can say, yeah, you got too much, we're going to take some of that power away from you. They agreed, like I mentioned, they want a balanced government, balance between states and federal government, but also a balance between the different branches of government, a balance between people making decisions and people having the right to have a say. So there should be this balance in government. And they wanted a government that was limited into taking away our own power. For the most part, we wanted people to have a big say over their own lives. So government should have a limited role in what they can tell you to do and how they can do it. That's what they agreed on. That was pretty simple. Now, what they didn't agree on was a little tougher. They did not agree on how these branches of government were going to be set up. Everybody wanted 3 branches of government, but they didn't know exactly how to set them up. So a president, for example, how do we pick a president? Some things were just, let's just have people voted up in a direct election, popular election. Well, how do people know who to vote for? And, if they're from different regions of the country, I might not know them. So that became problematic. Some said, let's have state governments pick a president. But again, that puts a lot of power in the hands of few, takes it away from really the people. So we came up with this idea of the Electoral College. It's a way to kind of modify like who the people vote for, to kind of check, make sure they're doing the right things. Courts. They had a hard time determining how many courts we need, what we need courts for. So they basically just created a Supreme Court and said, let's give Congress the right to create courts as we need them. Okay, so that was a compromise for the courts. The big debate came over the legislature, the legislative branch of government, particularly representation. Okay, remember, again, everybody is a little weary of everybody else. States are thinking like other states are going to, stick it to them and, not have their best interests at heart. So who gets the most representation? Obviously, big states wanted more representation than little states. Little states wanted to be on equal footing. So a lot of plans were presented. The Virginia plan was a big one. Talked about. Big states love this one because it wanted to have representation based on how many people you had, how wealthy you were. So obviously big states like Virginia, Pennsylvania, New York were like, yep, that's the one. Let's do that. Smaller states like New Jersey and like Rhode Island and Delaware were like, ooh, we don't like this one so much. They presented their own plan. It's called the New Jersey plan. That basically said, like, let's have every state have an equal amount of representation. Okay, little states like that one. Virginia plan was too big. The New Jersey plan was for the small. The Connecticut plan was just right. So it really combined the two right in the middle. Yes, that was the 3 bears, by the way. The Connecticut plan kind of combines the Virginia plan, the Jersey plan together. So the Virginia plan wanted based on population. The Jersey plan wanted equal. The Connecticut plan set up our current legislative branch the way we have it. It created what's called a bicameral legislature, where we have 2 houses, the Senate and the House of Representatives. The Senate is based on the New Jersey plan, where every state has an equal amount of representatives, that is 2. And the Virginia plan represents like the House of Representatives, where big states have more representatives than little states. So North Dakota, who has like 3 people that live there, they only have 1 representative. So one of the 3 people have to represent the state. In California, who has like 35 million people, they have 53 representatives. So they have a little bit more representation. So obviously the more reps you have, the more voice and the more say that state has. So in the Senate, every state has an equal say. So big states like California has the same say as small states like North Dakota in the Senate. In the House of Representatives, again, big states like California have a lot bigger say than small states like North Dakota. Okay. So the second problem with in the legislative branch, who is representatives, had to do with slavery. How do you count slaves? Now, the northern states who are like, we don't have slavery, And because you Southerners don't really count slaves as people, we really shouldn't count the number of slaves when determining how many representatives you have. And the Southern states are like, whoa, they're people. Like, even though we don't give them any rights and we don't treat them like people, they still are people. Like, let's count them when we determine our representatives. So the three-force compromise was basically a compromise between the North and South into determining how to allocate representation with regards to slaves. Basically, they said slaves count as 3/5 of a human, 3/5 of a person, in order to count them towards representatives. So, and if you're wondering to yourself, how did they come up with that weird number of 3/5? They literally did the math. If we counted slaves as 3/5 of a person, that gave the North and the South an equal amount of representatives. So they did the math on it, and they figured out that was the right number, the number they're going to go with. Other things is how to make the Constitution, once all this stuff was negotiated out, how to make this legit. So once, again, the summer was over and they hammered out the Constitution, they decided that, they had to give it some legitimacy. So what they did is they wanted to do popular elections in all 13 states. To make this Constitution legit, 9 states needed to ratify it. So 9 of the 13th, when they said it was okay, boom, we're good to go. There became an instant debate, an instant battle between Federalists, those that wanted the Constitution, and Anti-Federalists, those that were opposed to the Constitution. Anti-Federalists wanted strong states' rights. Federalists wanted a stronger national government. Again, no newspapers or any, I should say no TVs or internet back in those days. What they did have was newspapers and pamphlets. So what the Federalists did is they started cranking out a bunch of essays known as the Federalist Papers. One of the popular ones that talk about, again, balancing power between states and the federal government was one of the Federalist Papers known as Federalist Number 10, which clearly just states that we got a ton of interest in the United States. In order to protect the rights of the minority, meaning those that aren't on the winning side, not necessarily minorities when it comes to race or ethnic background, but people that are on the losing side, to protect your rights, that's a little bit of an issue. But the way we set up our government with federalism, with all these different interests in this huge country, it's going to be okay. Like, all those different interests are going to eventually, in the long run, balance each other out. So, you may be on the losing side of this issue, but you're going to be on the winning side of another. So, you might lose one, but you're going to win one somewhere else. So, so if you just think about yourself and your own personality, your own makeup, your all kinds of things, all kinds of professions and religions and races and all lots of things. So all of those things are all those different, you believe different things on different issues. All of those things eventually will balance out. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some, and eventually everybody's rights are going to be upheld. Federalist Number 10 also did say another thing, that this was going to be really good, that fact that we had so many differing opinions, because that's going to lead to really good public policies, that people will compromise a lot on issues, and those compromises are going to, again, lead to really good public policies. So that was the plan. The Bill of Rights was also a major issue in this debate. The Anti-Federalists were really disappointed that our Constitution did not initially have a Bill of Rights put in it, and that was one of their major talking points. So the ace up their sleeve for the Federalists were basically like, okay, here's the deal. If you vote for the Constitution, we are going to, the first thing that Congress is going to do is they're going to propose some amendments to the Constitution that's going to create a Bill of Rights. And that's exactly what they did. So the first 10 amendments to our Constitution are the Bill of Rights. So, okay, hopefully this helps to review a little bit of what we went over about the foundations of government. If you have ideas for other videos that you would like to see created that helps you review, please let me know, and I will get those knocked out as quickly as I possibly can. So I will see you guys around. Have a good one.